Okay, good afternoon or good morning, um, everyone. My name is Christiana Holmes, and we're going to talk about drainage profiles, creation, and annotation. And so the agenda here is before we can actually annotate the profiles, we need to create them and create sheets for them. So we'll start out with talking about different ways you can look at or create your pipe profiles. We'll create some profile sheets and then annotate those. So first up is the single pipe profile. So you can open the pipe profile for any singular pipe just by selecting it and hovering over it and going to the context menu, just like you would any other civil linear element. You can make edits and to the pipe profile elevations as well as the structure elevations inside the pipe profile. You can also get to the utility properties from here. And just a note, you can only do this in the drainage file, right? So I think previous versions you were able to access the pipe profile, but moving forward, due to referencing issues, you can only do this in the drainage file. Okay, so let's talk about profile runs. So when you go to create sheets or look at a network of pipes, you want to see the profile run, right? So we have three ways we can create profile runs. So they're shown here on the drainage and utilities ribbon. And the first one is hydraulic run from node, then hydraulic run to outfall, utility run from links. Once we have a profile run, we can then project that run to another line, such as an alignment. So we're going to go through each one of those. So we'll just go down the list. Hydraulic run from node. So basically this creates a profile run when you select a node that's hydraulically running to an outfall. So you would pick a node, and then everything that is picked up from that node to the outfall would be initially included in the profile run. Now you could stop it at another structure, but that's the steps, is it initially picks the hydraulic run. You would set a feature definition. So anytime you do a profile run, it creates a linear element. That's why it's asking for a feature definition. You pick where your start and stop nodes are, and then you create the profile run. So let's see how that's done. Okay, so we're going to create the profile run, and we can give the profile run a name, which I would suggest, so you know what structures are included. So we're going to call this catch basin 5 to head wall out. And we're going to pick a feature definition for that linear element that I just spoke about that is going to be created for the run of the profile. So we'll give that a name as well. And then we'll pick where we want our start node. So I'm going to just pick this node here. And as I said, it will highlight in orange where it's going to go to the outfall. Now it's asking me, do I want to stop at a different node or right click and accept all the way to the outfall? So that's what I did, right click, and you'll see it did create this linear element, which I could open the profile view from there on that element, but instead, I'm going to look in Explorer under my drainage and utilities model, and I should see the profile run there, and I can open that profile run from the drainage and utilities. Okay, second one, hydraulic runs to outfall. It's kind of the opposite of this. So you would pick the outfall, and then anything going to that outfall, it would create profile runs for. So it may create, this one may create multiple runs because it's going to do runs for like the lateral pipes. So let's take a look at how that works. Very similar process. We'll pick the hydraulic runs to outfall, and then you can pick a direction. Do you want to go up to down or down to up? Again, it's going to create that linear element. So we'll give it a feature definition, and we can name that if we want. And then it says select the outfall. So I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm going to pick the outfall, and then it's going to grab all of the pipes connected or flowing to that structure. And then I'll right click and accept the run, or runs in this case. So once I go and look at Explorer under my drainage and utilities model, I will see those profile runs there. So this is what it was named based on the structure names. And then here are the pipes coming into the main network. And again, I can just right click and open the profile model for any of those pipes. And I'm doing this in the drainage file, so we will show you how you can cut sheets from these outside of the drainage file. And lastly, utility runs from links. So this could be used for any type of utility to create profiles on. So not just stormwater. The first two are hydraulic-based profile runs. This one could be used for gas, electric, stormwater, whatever the case may be. So in this case, we're just going to pick the pipes that we want to include in the profile run and then create it that way. So we'll take a look at that. Utility runs from links. Again, you can give this a name. And a feature definition for that line that it creates. And we'll give that one a name as well. And so now I'm just going to come in and pick the elements or the pipes that I want to add to this profile run. And as I pick them, they'll highlight in this orange color. Once I'm finished picking, I just right click and it will create the profile run as it has it in the previous ones. So there we go, catch basin 5 to catch basin 1, and again, right click, open profile model, and I can see that profile run there. Okay, so once we have a profile run created, the fourth tool we have available to us is to project that run. So sometimes the client requires that the pipe be projected to something like the alignment, and that's how they produce their sheets. So if you need to be able to project that run to something, this is how you would do it. So in our case, we already have a profile run created. And so it's for this network here, and I want to project it onto the alignment. So I'm going to use project run, and it says to select the profile run. And you can give it some parameters, like you can give it, again, a feature definition for that projected line. And you can also do a vertical offset. So I'm going to select the profile run to project, and then select the line I want to project it onto. And left click. And then now, in this case, I would open the profile of the alignment, what it was projected onto. And if I open the profile alignment, I'll see the pipe there projected from that pipe run. Okay, just a little some knowledge about the profile view just to help you out. So there are some things that you can do as a user to view different exaggerations, or maybe turning on and off the grid sometimes helps. And we'll show some user prefs and the create 3D cut, so you can view things from the 3D model as well. So here we have a profile of our pipe already created, and I'm showing here. And some things in your user prefs. Now we will see in the newest release of Open Roads how we can change this hydraulic grade line based on the feature definition. But you also have this user prefs for drainage and utilities. Do you want to show an energy grade line? You know, what color is that going to come out on? So user prefs for drainage and utilities in the profile view. I also can change like the exaggeration of the profile, and this is for any profile window by using my Control or Shift keys and zooming in and out on the mouse wheel. Now, as I do this, I'm not locking to any particular exaggeration, so if I wanted to see this exaggerated at a specific value, then I can do that through the view attributes. So I could pick something like 5. And these default values come from the workspace, by the way. So they're set up in the workspace. The grid here, again, this is not for printing purposes, but it does help try, to see the station and elevations along the profile. So something you may want to consider. So another tool we have is 3D Cut for the profile view, and so I think you can show what is referenced in your 3D model. So in other words, you could see like the proposed elements or the existing ground terrain, and we have 2 options. One you just saw here that I can just do the extents of the profile, or I can actually do one called corners, and I can draw outside the extents of the profile just by placing this square around it. So this is a good way to see your existing ground, or maybe like bridge or some of the roadway elements that you may want to see. You also can move this square and then regenerate the 3D cut. You also can turn on and off levels in the 3D view and regenerate the 3D cut with certain levels on or off if you may not want to see them. Okay, other profile types. So with the drainage and utilities tools, you do have some other types of profiles that you can use to view your drainage information. One is the analysis profile, and the other one is an engineering profile. Now, neither one of these are necessarily how you would create sheets, but it is good for reviewing your drainage and utility information. So we'll take a look at those. And so in the profile runs, I also have those 2 options, open and analysis profile. So if I select that, I can see this chart style analysis profile, and I can turn on and off different things like labels, so I can see information about the network. I also can turn on and off labels inside the chart. I can print this if I needed to. And there's different options that you can set or export this to a drawing. So if I want to see different things in different colors or with different features, I can set that here. Same setup for the engineering profile. It's a graph style profile on like a grid, and again, I can see some information about it. I can turn on and off the labels for the conduit. I have different options I can set in this one as well. I can again export to a drawing or print this if I wanted to. Okay, so how do we actually cut a profile sheet, a pipe profile sheet? So the tool for creating sheets is place name boundary. I would recommend a number of steps when it comes to creating pipe profile sheets. And maybe I would probably recommend this for creating most of your sheets, but so first thing we're going to do is create a clip boundaries file. We'll reference in the reference container and set the terrain to active so that we can see the profile run through a reference. And we'll do that from Explorer. We can set our desired vertical exaggeration if needed, and then we'll create the clip boundaries in this file. The next step will be to create the profile sheets. So we'll use the place name boundary tool, and again we'll reference in the reference container and reference in the clip boundaries, and then we'll attach all the profile views and cut our sheets from the name boundaries manager. So I'm going to actually demo this. So I'm already in the Highway 72 drainage reference container, and all I have in this file is what I would like to see, potentially what I would like to see either in my profile or plan view, depending on what types of sheets you're creating. And so I'm going to open a file I already created called my clip boundaries. And I'll just attach my reference container. And I'm going to do this, I want to do this with live nesting, set to 1, and I'll set this to display overrides to never, and hit OK. And I'll do a fit view. Okay, so there is my reference container. And if I look at Explorer right now and go to OpenRoads model in this file, I would kind of expect to see my reference models here, but to get those to show up, you have to set the terrain as active. So if I set the terrain as active, I can see my reference models, one of which is my drainage proposed, and then I can see the linear geometry that's in there, which is that util profile run. And if I right click on that, I'll see open profile model. And then I can just pick a view, and there is my pipe profile. So I'm going to go now to my drawing production tab, and I'm going to pick the place name boundaries tool, and I'll pick the profile drawing seed. And depending on your workspace, you may have different setup here, but I'll just pick the AntCD profile, and I think I'm going to do this at 20 scale. And again, I'm not going to create the sheets in this file. I'm just going to create the clip boundaries. So I'm going to select my profile. And I can go from beginning to end. If I wanted to make this like start a little bit before, I could just give it like a minus. And I can continue to play with these values as I'm kind of placing them to see where they're shifting, if that's enough room. If I wanted the 3D cut beforehand, I probably should do that, but in this case, I just leave it alone, and I'm going to just create my clip boundaries. Okay, so next step is I'm going to go into another file called my drainage profile sheets. And again, I'm going to reference that reference container with a nesting depth of 1. I'll set this to never. And then let me fit the view. And then I'm going to attach that clip boundaries file. And even though I don't have anything in plan view, I still can attach this. I'm going to set this to 0. And if I go and open, again, let me set this, as active so I can get to my reference models. And if I go and open this profile run, I can use this tool called Attach All Profile Views inside of the profile. And if I hit that, that will attach the references that are for the profile view. So I can see now my clip boundaries in here, and I can now use the named boundaries manager to view my profile groups, and I see that one here. And then I can cut sheets either to this file. Let me make this correct. Either to this file, or I can put the sheets all in their separate DGN files, or I could make a drawing models file and the sheet models file. So I'll just do them to this file and hit OK. And there I have my sheets and their own separate file, and I can see the two different ones there. And you'll notice the annotations. We will talk about that when we get to the annotation groups. Okay, so I said that in the newest release of 2022 R1, there was some new ways to view your conduit. So the symbology for the not only the HGL and the EGL have been included, but you can now view the inner and outer walls of conduit in a plan or profile view. So let's take a look at that. So previously, this plan view is what we had. We just had a line that was representing the pipes, but now, in the newest release, you will be able to view the inside and outside of the pipes. And that is all going to come from the feature definition. So you could have them on different levels as well. So if you want to turn different levels on and off, we can see that in the profile and in the plan view. Similarly, you'll have part of the feature definition will have a element template to display the HGL and the EGL. So we can display those, and you'll see there's some new tools here, display HGL and EGL. And if I hit that, I'll see those lines there. We also added the ability to display an HGL from a different scenario. So let's say we had two different scenarios ran, and we want to display the HGLs from both. Now we can see that. So maybe we did a 50-year and then a 100-year. We can display that and even put it on a different level. All right, labeling DNU. So there's two methods for labeling. One is the civil labeler, and that allows you to place text favorites with saved fields. And the text favorites can be dynamic or static or both. You can do it with or without a leader line. And you also have the microstation place note, place text commands that have always been there. And then the more automated way of labeling is to use annotation groups, and those can be assigned to a feature definition, or they can be assigned to a sheet seed definition. So what are text favorites? Before we even get into placing civil labels or creating annotation groups, we got to start at the beginning, and all of them or most of them are built off of text favorites. So a text favorite is just a saved bit of text. So it could be static, could be computed text, could be a mix of both. When I say static, I mean is if you have a label that you place over and over again, you could save that as a text favorite. Could just be simple text. So you'll create the text favorites in the text favorite manager, or you can do it through the text editor. I prefer the text favorite manager, but we're going to create one here in a minute. So you would just create the text favorite, give it a name, give it a text style. And when you're creating the drainage and utility text favorites, you really should be using the element properties rather than the properties from the DNU database. Previous to, I believe, 10.10, we had to use the DNU database for some things, but now a lot of those properties are actually on the element. And I think the ability to label from the database will eventually go away. So if you have some already created, you may want to update those as well. Okay, so once we get our text favorite created, we can then use the Civil Labeler tool to place that text favorite and then add customizations to that. So things like frames or dividers or different text styles or dimension styles. Previous to the newest release, everything was done in an XML file. Now it's managed through Explorer and a DGN library. And there's been some enhancements to the Civil Labeler tool. So let's take a look at creating a text favorite. And a civil label. Okay, so again, the text favorite manager is how I like to make my text favorites. So I'm going to go on the ribbon under the annotations, the little glyph icon here. If I hit that, that will bring up the text favorites manager. I will see on the left all of the text favorites that come from my workspace in a DGN library. And I'll see my file name here. I can add this to my file. And so I'll give it a name. I'll just call it and so I'm going to give this a text style. And the easiest way for me to get the element information is to use the select element button. You can look through the field properties here and go into drainage and utilities, but I just like to use this select element, and I can just pick an element like this one here. And then I'll see all of those properties that are on the element. And these are all the ones that have moved. They've moved from the drainage and utility database. So let's say I want to get, let's say, the name of it. And so once I pick the property in this dialog, it will redirect me here in the text favorites. So I'm going to say accept, and then we're going to get, we can add some text. We'll get ground elevation. And then anything that has formatting, you can obviously do some formatting so that you get exactly what you want. So if you don't hit this save preview button, you'll just get this like string of text. Sometimes I like to just do this because it looks a little bit more like a label. I'll say invert. And we'll get a couple more properties. And then I'm going to save this text favorite. All right, close the text favorite manager. And then I'm going to go to my Open Roads standards. And I'm using the latest release, by the way, but it's not quite out yet. But this is how it will be done from now on. So before you would use the Civil Labeler through an XML. But now we have this label definitions section in our open road standards. So I could say this is for drainage, and we'll just create a new label. Let's call this. And I'll right click on that and go to manage. And that will bring up the dialog that looks similar to the manager before. And in my file, I should see the text favorite structure info. Now, for plan, I've got station and offset. I could have gotten this just from the, by selecting a line. I got it from the drainage and utility element. I guess it just really depends on how you want to create the label. But in this here, I can just tell it what I want my prompts to be. So I'll tell myself or the user to identify the structure. Now, if I was picking the station offset from like an alignment instead of the properties on the element, I would probably need to set this as select as well. And you'll see, so you could have multiple, targets. But we're just going to have the one. Identify structure, and then we would go to the placement tab and select the method we want to use. So I'm going to be selecting an element. Do I want to set this on a particular level? That would be my annotation or my element template. So I'll just pick that. And now I can override the dimension style and the text style coming from the text favorite and the element template. And I'll say I want this to be view horizontal, and I'm going to save that. And now let's go into the civil labeler and place it. So I should see that folder and name there, and I'll just hit the place button, and I'll pick this and I'll place the label there. Now you'll notice that the station offset is set to 0. That's because this element doesn't have a baseline station offset set on it. So if I just go into that drainage proposed file, and I select that element, and I could do multiples if I wanted. I'll just do the one in this case, and I go to my properties. I can set a baseline reference and pick that baseline. Now if I look at my properties, it has a station and baseline offset, and so if I went back to that labels file, it should update that label accordingly. And there we go. As I move back, now it has the correct station and offset. Okay, what about the other way to annotate? And that is through annotation groups. So also accessed through Explorer. It's divided into different categories, preset already to be like plan, and that could be drawing, which means in the drawing model and sheet. When you create sheets, it can be linear elements. So things like your pipes can have an annotation group for plan. Linear 3D, or points would be like your structures. Those could have an annotation group for plan. And even profile has the same thing, drawing, linear, point, and then cross section at the moment just has for sheets. So even if you wouldn't use these annotation groups necessarily when you go to plot, especially maybe for plan, you could still have annotation groups that are on like a no plot level that could just give you information as you're designing your drainage model. A good place to start is the delivered examples that come with the Bentley workspace, because if you've never created an annotation group before, it can seem a little overwhelming. So how do we create them? So in the Explorer, you go to whatever type of annotation group you want to create, and you can create categories. So like if you want to manage them in folders, and then you just right click and say new, and you're creating an annotation group. So when you create a group, it's managed through this annotation, manage annotations dialog. So once you create it and name it, you right click and say manage. These over here on the left hand side of the dialog are what are called annotation definitions. So one annotation definition can be used for multiple annotation groups. So just be cognizant of that, because if you make a change to it just in this annotation group, you've changed it for every annotation group using that definition. So if you just want to like copy it and then make changes and name it something else, be aware that you can do that, and multiple annotation groups can use the same annotation definitions. Okay, the annotation manager. So you would start by adding a new or existing annotation definition. And then there's a number of different options for that annotation definition. And it depends on what type of annotation definition you're creating. There's different types. So after you edit it and you make the changes and you set up the parameters you want, you can display it through the Manage Annotations dialog. Is it the easiest to use? Not always, but you can see the display there. And the only way to save it is to close the annotation or Manage Annotations dialog. So once you close it, you've saved your changes. So be aware of that as well. You can use the import-export XML capability, so you can bring in annotation groups from different DGNs or different libraries. And just a recommendation, I wouldn't leave this dialog open as you're moving between files. It does not save, and also has a tendency to not really do great things to the annotation group. Annotation group is scale or controlled by the scale of the the annotation scale lock, so make sure it's set to something that's viewable. Okay, once you have the annotation group, how do you link it to different things? So like I said, it could be linked to a feature definition or to a sheet seed definition. And so it's in the feature symbologies, and that's where you would link that annotation group. In the sheets, so once you have created an annotation group for sheets, you can set it in the definition file, or when you go to create sheets, it should be listed there as an annotation group that you could pick from. So let's just take a look at that. So we'll just take a look at some different text favorites we have for our drainage and utilities. So we have this one that just labels the pipe and ground and invert elevation. So how would we add that to like our structures? So the annotation group itself, again, is managed in this Open Road Standards under Explorer. So we can create a new one here for the node, and I can right click on that and go to Manage. And so then I can add, like I said, new or existing annotation definitions. So we're going to add a profile point annotation. We'll call it node annotation. And then we just set these parameters up with how we want the annotation to display. So the template would be the level that it's going to go on. Do we want to place a leader line or not? If no, just collapse the group and move on. So how do we want this to be set? So we can set some different placement options. And then if we chose text, we're going to choose a text favorite. In this case, we'll pick the one that we just showed. You also have some options of how it's rotated, view readable or view independent. And you don't need the path to the DGN lab necessarily. You just need to find the text favorite. So we'll close that. And then So we have our annotation group, and we can go into the point feature symbologies because it was a point annotation group or definition. And for manholes, maybe, if we look at the properties for that, you have an option for the profile annotation group. And so I can pick that here. And now that's set on that particular feature. So now if I go to, this has been changed now, you can only do this through the drawing model, but if I go to the model annotation, I can see that those features are then picking up that annotation group. And if I move them, it should update as well. And with that, I think that leaves me like 15 minutes for questions. Perfect timing.